Here's the harsh truth: every woman has a soft, hidden weak point that can flip the entire dynamic between you and her. But almost no man knows how to find it, let alone touch it. Most men stumble through relationships thinking attraction is built only on looks, money, or status. They try harder, give more, and bend over backward to please her. Yet somehow, she pulls away. The more effort they give, the colder she becomes. And deep down, you've probably felt that sting, the confusion of giving your all and still watching her slip through your fingers. What you don't see is that beneath every confident smile, every teasing glance, every wall she builds, there's a private place in her heart she guards fiercely, a place tied to emotions, memories, and secret desires she'd never admit out loud. This is her soft spot, and when you learn how to approach it with control and precision, everything changes. She starts thinking about you when you're not around. She craves your presence without understanding why. She feels a pull toward you that logic can't break. Today, I'm going to reveal how this works, the psychology behind it, the subtle moves that bypass her defenses, and the mindset that makes her weak for you without you chasing or begging. If you've ever wanted to unlock the part of her that no other man can touch, pay attention. Let's get into it. Number 1. Hunger for attention. Most men think women just want attention in the same way someone wants a cup of coffee in the morning, a nice bonus, but not essential. The truth is, for many women, attention is more like oxygen. She may not say it out loud, she may even act like she doesn't care, but deep inside, there's a constant craving for validation, acknowledgement, and the emotional charge that comes from knowing someone is focused on her. This isn't about weakness, it's about how the female mind is wired to respond to connection and social energy. Think about it: social media has turned this hunger into an addiction. Every like, every comment, every message hits her brain like a dopamine spark. But here's the catch: the more she gets, the less she values it. That's where most men go wrong. They think pouring constant attention into her will make her more attracted, when in reality, it often does the opposite. She starts to see it as her right, not your gift. Take Josh, 29, for example. He met Emily, 26, at a friend's rooftop party in New York. From the start, Josh showered her with texts, compliments, and little "just thinking of you" messages. At first, Emily responded warmly. She liked the feeling of being wanted. But within a month, Josh noticed her replies slowing, her interest fading. Why? Because the mystery was gone. She had the full supply of his attention, and without scarcity, her excitement died. What Emily really craved wasn't just attention, it was the uncertainty of whether she could get it. That's why the men who don't hand over all their focus at once seem to pull women in deeper. Their attention becomes a rare currency, not a free giveaway. And when she has to earn it, it transforms into something she treasures instead of something she takes for granted. This is where Stoic thinking comes in. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. If you apply that to relationships, it means you control when, how, and to what degree you give your attention. You stop letting her dictate your focus, and you become intentional with it. This shift not only protects your emotional energy, but also amplifies your perceived value. The real secret is balance. Give her enough to spark her interest, but hold enough back to keep her wondering. This doesn't mean playing games or being manipulative. It means understanding that attraction thrives in the space between certainty and doubt. Too much certainty kills desire. A little unpredictability keeps her invested. So here's my challenge for you. Audit how you're giving your attention. Are you flooding her with it because you're afraid she might lose interest if you don't? Or are you treating it like the valuable resource it is? If you can shift into the second category, you'll start to see her leaning in instead of pulling away. I want you to drop a comment right now and write, "I control my attention." That's the mindset shift that turns you from a man chasing validation into a man she works to impress. And stick around, because in the next part, we're going to talk about something that makes this hunger for attention even stronger, and it's not what you think. Number 2. When her thoughts turn shadows into storms. One of the most overlooked truths about female psychology is how powerfully her mind can transform small uncertainties into emotional hurricanes. You might think everything is fine, you've been present, consistent, and nothing has gone wrong. But in her inner world, even a small pause in your attention or a slight change in your tone can spark questions, and those questions quickly multiply. A mistext reply turns into, "Is he losing interest?" A delay in plans becomes, "Is he seeing someone else?" What starts as a shadow of doubt in her mind can, without warning, evolve into a storm of suspicion, insecurity, or emotional distance. This isn't about irrationality, it's about how human psychology, especially in women, wired for emotional connection, processes uncertainty. Her mind is like a magnifying glass. It takes small details and amplifies them, creating a vivid narrative that feels real to her. And here's where it gets tricky. She may never say any of this out loud. You won't hear the questions forming. You'll only feel the shift in her energy, the cooling in her tone, or the sudden bursts of testing behavior. From a Stoic perspective, this is a textbook example of why you can't control another person's thoughts or feelings. You can only control your own actions and responses. Epictetus famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." If you panic in response to her storm, over-explain, or start showering her with reassurance, you may think you're calming the situation. In reality, you're often confirming her fears, telling her, in a subtle way, that there's a reason to be worried. The key is to remain grounded when she begins to spiral internally. Instead of trying to chase down every shadow in her mind, you hold your center. You remain calm, consistent, and unshaken. This steadiness does two things. It stops you from fueling her anxiety, and it communicates without words that you are a man in control of himself. Here's the paradox. When you resist the urge to fix her emotional storms, you actually give her something she craves, but rarely admits: emotional safety. She feels your presence as a stable anchor, and even if her mind races, it eventually quiets in the presence of your steadiness. You don't match her chaos with chaos. You stay the calm in the middle of the storm. But let's be clear, this isn't about being cold or detached to the point of neglect. It's about knowing when to engage and when to let her emotions run their natural course without trying to dominate or suppress them. The man who can do this earns a deeper form of respect, not because he bends to every emotional gust, but because he proves that no gust can move him off center. So, the next time you feel her pulling away, testing you, or questioning without reason, remember that her thoughts may be turning harmless shadows into imagined storms. Don't try to outrun the weather, just be the mountain it moves around. Now, I want you to comment below. I am the calm. That's the mindset that will stop you from getting swept into her emotional storms, and instead make her see you as the steady presence she can't replace. And in the next part, we're going to uncover the subtle trigger that can make her chase you harder without you lifting a finger, and it's rooted in something you might be overlooking every single day. Number 3. The beauty she sees as a flaw. One of the strangest and most fascinating truths about women is this. The very thing you find stunning about her may be the thing she secretly criticizes the most when she looks in the mirror. You might see her freckles as unique, her laugh as magnetic, or her slightly crooked smile as irresistibly charming, but in her mind, those same traits can feel like imperfections. And here's the key. When you learn to notice and value these flaws in a way that feels genuine, you create a connection no generic compliment could ever touch. Take, for example, Daniel, 29, from Austin. He'd been casually dating a woman named Emily, 27, who had this tiny scar above her eyebrow from a childhood accident. Emily always tried to cover it with makeup, thinking it made her look less feminine. One night over drinks, Daniel casually told her, "I love how that little mark makes your face one of a kind. It's the kind of thing that makes you impossible to forget." He didn't dwell on it, didn't turn it into some overly dramatic confession. He simply reframed something she saw as a flaw into a rare and attractive detail. Emily didn't say much in the moment, but later admitted it stuck in her mind for weeks. This works because it taps into a deep part of female psychology. Many women live in a world where beauty is defined by impossible standards. Perfect skin, perfect body, perfect everything. She's been conditioned to notice every microscopic imperfection and compare herself to the airbrushed images she sees daily. So, when you as a man not only notice these unique traits but actually prefer them, you're doing something most men never think to do. You're making her feel seen in a way that transcends superficial validation. From a Stoic point of view, this aligns with the idea that value is not in the object itself, but in the perception we choose to hold. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When you shift your perception and openly value what she has been taught to hide, you're coloring her thoughts differently, and that leaves a lasting mark. Now, here's the important part. This only works when it's authentic. Women have a sharp radar for fake flattery. If you try to manufacture an appreciation for something you don't actually find attractive, she'll feel it instantly. The power comes from genuinely noticing something unique and expressing your attraction to it without trying to sound poetic or overly rehearsed. Let's flip it to another example. Josh, 34, from Denver, who met Rachel, 31, on a hiking trip. Rachel hated her too deep voice, thinking it wasn't soft or feminine enough. Josh, on the other hand, told her over coffee, "I think your voice is one of the sexiest things about you. It's the kind of voice you remember, even after the conversation ends." Rachel laughed it off at first, but she later admitted that hearing a man frame her supposed flaw as an advantage completely shifted the way she felt around him. This approach creates intimacy because it doesn't just praise what's obvious. Anyone can say, "You're beautiful," when she's dressed up for a night out. But to notice the details she hides and value them is to step into a space where very few men ever go. You're telling her, "I see you, all of you, and I find you more attractive because of these details, not in spite of them." So here's your move. Pay attention to the things she downplays or hides. Listen for the little insecurities she hints at in conversation. And when the moment is right, reframe them as rare, valuable, and memorable. Not in a needy way. Not in a way that seeks her approval, but in a way that shows you see beauty where others overlook it. Drop it below in the comments. I see the rare. That's the mindset that will make you stand out in her world. And next, we're going to explore a truth even more subtle, the quiet signal you send without realizing it, that can make her feel drawn to you before you've even touched her. Number 4. Compliments that melt her defenses. Most men think a compliment is just about telling a woman she's beautiful. They throw out the same predictable lines, "You have gorgeous eyes," or "You look amazing tonight," without realizing these phrases bounce right off her because she's heard them 1,000 times before. But here's the truth. A compliment that truly melts her defenses doesn't flatter the surface. It speaks directly to the part of her she protects from the world. See, every woman walks through life with her guard up. She's learned to filter attention because so much of it is shallow, manipulative, or self-serving. Compliments that target her looks without depth often feel like currency in a transaction, something given with the unspoken hope of getting something in return. That's why they barely touch her. A compliment that penetrates those defenses is different. It notices something rare and deeply personal, not just what's on display, but what's underneath. It could be the way her energy lights up a room when she's passionate about a subject. the way she handles pressure without letting people see her stress, or the way her laughter feels completely unrestrained when she's genuinely enjoying herself. These kinds of compliments bypass her social armor because they're rooted in observation, not performance. From a Stoic perspective, this ties into a principle Marcus Aurelius wrote about: if someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. It's about being grounded in truth, not in empty perception. In relationships, that means speaking only what you've truly seen and felt, not recycling flattery you think she wants to hear. A Stoic man isn't desperate to win her over. He's willing to let his words stand on the strength of their honesty. Here's the subtle power. When you compliment her in this way, you're not just validating her, you're revealing that you see her, the whole of her, in a way most men don't take the time to. And that shifts her energy toward you. Suddenly, you're not just another voice in the crowd. You're the man who notices what others overlook. There's also a rhythm to delivering these compliments. They work best when they come unexpectedly, not as part of a rapid-fire string of flattery. The surprise is part of the magic. If she's talking about a childhood hobby, and you notice the spark in her eyes dropping in with, "I love how alive you get when you talk about this," hits harder than any generic praise. Why? Because it's not planned. It's not about what she's wearing or how she looks. It's about who she is when she's unguarded. And here's another layer: when you offer such a compliment, you can't linger on it like you're fishing for a reaction. Give it, let it land, and then move on naturally. That restraint is powerful. It shows you're not seeking validation for noticing her. You're simply stating a truth you believe. This calm delivery reinforces the idea that you're secure in yourself, which makes the compliment feel even more valuable. Think of it this way. Any man can see the painting in the gallery, but very few can recognize the subtle brushstrokes that make it a masterpiece. Your job isn't to scream about the obvious beauty. It's to quietly acknowledge the details others ignore, and do it in a way that leaves her wondering what else you've noticed about her. When you master this, her guard doesn't just lower for a moment. She starts to associate your presence with the rare feeling of being genuinely understood. And that's when you've planted something deeper than attraction. You've built trust. In the next section, we'll go deeper into a truth that's even more dangerous for most men to handle: how to step into the space she secretly hopes someone will take, but would never admit out loud. Number 5. The reckless heart that love can blind. Love has the power to inspire, but it also has the power to distort. When a woman's heart is captured, her rational mind doesn't always keep pace. She can find herself drawn to choices that don't serve her, defending actions she would normally see as red flags, or ignoring her own instincts just to protect the connection she feels. This is the reckless side of love, the part that can blind even the most level-headed person. For men, understanding this isn't about exploiting her vulnerability. It's about recognizing that strong emotions can cloud her judgment, just as they can cloud yours. The difference is that women are often encouraged by society to follow their hearts, without as much emphasis on slowing down to test if what they feel aligns with reality. Take Mark, 32, from Chicago. He met Sarah, 29, at a mutual friend's gathering. From the start, the chemistry was intense: texts late into the night, weekends spent entirely together, constant displays of affection. But within weeks, Mark noticed Sarah making decisions that surprised him. She cancelled long-standing plans with friends, started skipping her morning runs, and even began pushing off work projects to be available when he was free. Mark wasn't demanding this, she was choosing it, but it was clear her desire to be close was starting to override the balance she once valued. From the outside, it might look romantic, two people prioritizing each other above everything else. But underneath, this kind of intensity can create cracks. When love blinds her, she may not see the subtle shifts that are changing who she is until she starts feeling restless, lost, or resentful. The Stoics warned about letting passion become the driver of our decisions. Seneca once said, "He who is driven by love, though it may seem noble, is no less a slave than he who is driven by fear." The lesson here is that unchecked emotion, whether it's affection, lust, or longing, can become a chain if it's not balanced with reason. The challenge for you, as a man, is to stay grounded when she starts leaning in too heavily, especially if she's sacrificing her own needs or identity in the process. This isn't about pushing her away for the sake of control. It's about holding space for her to remain herself, even in the heat of connection. In Mark's case, he learned to gently encourage Sarah to keep her routines, see her friends, and maintain her personal goals, not because he needed distance, but because he understood that lasting attraction thrives when both people stay whole. On the flip side, consider Lisa, 27, who fell hard for David, 34, after a whirlwind first month. David, unlike Mark, didn't notice or didn't mind that Lisa was centering her entire world around him. At first, the attention felt flattering, but over time, he felt the pressure of being her sole source of excitement, comfort, and validation. The weight of her expectations made him withdraw, which left Lisa confused and hurt. What started as passion turned into imbalance, and that imbalance eroded their connection. Here's the paradox. Love's intensity can spark deep desire, but it's the preservation of individuality that sustains it. When you see that her feelings are starting to blind her, when she's putting herself in situations she wouldn't otherwise choose, your role isn't to lecture or control, it's to embody steadiness, to be the anchor that holds firm so she doesn't drift too far from herself. When you do this, you're not dampening the fire, you're protecting it from burning out too quickly. You're showing her that your connection doesn't have to be a reckless freefall. It can be a place where passion and reason coexist, and that's the kind of love that doesn't fade when the first rush wears off. In the next section, we'll explore how certain wounds she hides can become gateways to trust if you have the awareness to see them. Number 6. The fear that makes her hold on too tight. There's a certain fear that sits quietly in the background of many women's minds, the fear of losing something they deeply value. And when that fear takes hold, it can make her grip the connection too tightly, sometimes without realizing it. This isn't always about insecurity in the traditional sense. Often, it's about the uncertainty of how much control she truly has over the bond you share. In the beginning, this fear can look like deep affection. She wants to be close, she wants to hear from you often, she makes sure your time together is constant. But over time, that closeness can turn into overprotection of the relationship itself. She might begin to overanalyze small changes in your tone, wonder why you didn't text back immediately, or feel uneasy when you seem more absorbed in your own life. What's really happening here is that her mind starts to weave a narrative, one where she's at risk of losing you. And the more she fears loss, the more she tries to prevent it by tightening her hold. The problem is, the tighter the grip, the more suffocating the relationship can feel for both people. The Stoics understood this dynamic in a different context, the way humans cling to what they love out of fear of its impermanence. Epictetus wrote, "When you are delighted with anything, remember to hold it lightly, for it is not yours to keep forever." In relationships, the same principle applies. No matter how strong the bond, trying to control it out of fear often speeds up the very loss you're trying to avoid. For men, recognizing this fear is crucial. It's easy to mistake it for passion or devotion, but the underlying energy is different. Passion is free-flowing. Fear is constricting. When a woman's fear of loss kicks in, her behaviors shift from simply enjoying you to guarding you, and that can slowly erode attraction. The irony is that the fear making her hold on too tightly can often be dissolved by the very thing she's afraid of losing: your presence. But here's the key: it has to be a presence rooted in calm confidence, not reassurance through constant attention. If you rush to soothe every anxious moment, you risk reinforcing the fear rather than resolving it. Instead, you lead by example. You show her, without words, that love doesn't need to be gripped to be real. This might mean keeping your rhythm when she's feeling uneasy, rather than bending your life to her fear. It might mean holding steady in silence rather than over-explaining. Over time, this teaches her nervous system that the relationship can survive moments of space, and that distance doesn't always mean danger. From a deeper perspective, this fear isn't just about losing you, it's about losing the feelings she associates with you. Security, validation, excitement, belonging. If she hasn't learned to source these from within, then you become the sole provider. And in that dependency, fear will always grow. Your role isn't to fix that fear for her, it's to remain unshaken by it. To embody the principle Marcus Aurelius lived by, be like the rock against which the waves continually break. It stands firm, and the raging of the sea falls still around it. When you are that rock, she eventually realizes she doesn't need to grip so tightly because she can trust the strength of what you've built. In the end, the fear that makes her hold on too tight is simply a mirror of how much she values the connection. But without your steady hand guiding the pace, it can consume the relationship from within. The antidote is not more control, but more trust. And trust can only grow in the space where both people can breathe. In the next section, we'll explore how curiosity about her inner world can become the bridge that keeps desire alive. Number 7. Walls she hides behind her smile. On the surface, her smile looks warm, easy, inviting. But if you pay real attention, you will notice it sometimes works like armor. It keeps things light, it keeps you guessing, and it keeps you outside the parts of her life that actually matter. Most men never see the armor. They take the smile at face value and assume closeness. Then they wonder why the connection stalls. Those walls were not built overnight. They come from breakups that ended without closure, friendships that turned competitive, family stories she does not share on first dates. To the world, she is charming, capable, and quick with a joke. Inside, she is measuring whether you are steady enough to handle the real conversation that happens beneath the smile. Here is how it plays out in real life. Michael is 52, a project manager who has his life together. He meets Lauren, 46, a nurse with a bright laugh and a calendar that never stops. Dinners are easy, the banter flows, and she always looks put together. But every time he tries to steer the talk toward anything personal, she skims the surface. She changes topics, asks about his day, or checks the time. Michael assumes she is not interested and considers pulling away. Before he does, he notices a pattern. When he shows up, stays relaxed, and does not press for answers, her shoulders drop. When he fills the silence with fixer talk, she shuts down again. So he changes his approach. He keeps the dates simple, keeps his phone off the table, and stops turning questions into interviews. He shares a little more about his own life, not to pry something out of her, but to set a tone that says honesty is normal here. A week later, they grab coffee after her shift. She is tired, hair pulled back, no perfect laugh, no social sparkle. Michael does not flinch, he does not try to hype her up. He sits with her, asks one real question, then lets the quiet do some work. She tells him about a brother she worries about, and a fear she has of being the only responsible person in every room. It is not a flood, but it is real. The wall did not break because he pushed. It lowered because she felt safe. That is the key. A guarded woman does not open because you demand it. She opens because the environment you create makes protection unnecessary. Pressure raises the wall. Patience lowers it. Interrogation sounds like a spotlight. Presence feels like shade on a hot day. When you stop trying to grab intimacy and start earning it, her smile stops being a mask and starts being an invitation. There are mistakes you must avoid. Do not reward the mask with more performance. If every time she keeps it light, you chase harder, you train her to stay light. Do not take the first hint of openness and turn it into a therapy session. Let her set the pace. Do not confuse mystery with distance. Stay warm, stay consistent, and keep your standards. Your steadiness communicates more than any speech about being trustworthy. For men in midlife, this is even more important. You are not auditioning. You are demonstrating leadership of your own life. A woman who has built walls is not looking for a savior. She is scanning for a man who can hold his center while she decides if she can put the armor down. Your job is not to tear down the wall. Your job is to be the kind of man who does not require its existence. If this hit home, add your voice in the comments with 3 words that set your intention. Write this exactly: I see beyond. Let it be a marker for the way you will show up from now on. In the next part, we will decode a quieter signal than a smile, the kind of silence that reveals more than words, and how to respond without breaking the spell. Number 8. Trusting the man who shouldn't have it. There is a quiet paradox at the center of attraction. A woman can hand deep trust to a man who has not known her long and who has not yet earned it by time or biography. From the outside, it looks reckless. Inside her body, it feels like certainty. The certainty does not come from a checklist. It comes from how he carries himself in the present moment. Calm, under pressure, clear in his decisions, unaffected by approval. The signal is not what he says. It is the way he moves through uncertainty without losing himself. Most men try to earn trust by arguing their case. They present evidence, promise outcomes, and over-explain intentions. None of that touches the part of her that decides. Trust is not a courtroom. It is a felt sense. If her nervous system reads steadiness, she relaxes. If it senses neediness, she braces. Your posture, your pace, your ability to hold silence without scrambling for reassurance do more than any speech you could give. This is where Stoicism becomes practical. Epictetus said, "It is not what happens to you but how you react to it that matters." She is watching your reactions. When plans shift, do you sulk or adapt? When she tests a boundary, do you posture or hold it with calm? When you are unsure, do you freeze or make a simple decision and own it? Your reactions are the biography she believes, even if she has known you for a week. There is a darker edge to this truth. The same gravity that pulls her trust toward a grounded man can also pull it toward a man who only performs grounded. If you wear composure like a costume, sooner or later the mask slips. That is why the work is not to act calm. The work is to be calm. Build a life that does not collapse if she steps back. Keep purpose, friendships, routines, and standards, whether she is leaning in or drifting. When your center exists independent of her mood, she feels safe around you without knowing why. Handling her trust well means you move slow where it matters. You set the pace, not with distance for drama, but with intention. You show warmth without flooding. You invite intimacy without rushing. You lead without pushing. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the rock against which the waves break." The wave is her emotion in the moment. The rock is your character. If you hold shape, the sea settles. There are traps to avoid. Do not confuse her quick trust with permission to coast. Early access is not a reward. It is a responsibility. Do not use her openness as leverage. That kills respect and it stains your frame in a way that is hard to clean. Do not try to micromanage how she trusts you either. Control breeds resistance. Clarity breeds ease. Say what you mean. Do what you say. Keep your words small and your follow-through large. Practice small proofs of steadiness. Arrive when you said you would. End conversations cleanly. Make choices that align with your values, even when nobody is watching. These are simple habits, but they collect in her memory. They form a pattern that tells her you are safe to lean on without losing yourself. Over time, that pattern turns early trust into earned trust, which is the only kind that lasts. If you have ever felt a woman open quickly, and you knew your job was to carry that trust with discipline, write this in the comments to set your standard. I honor trust. Next, we shift into a more delicate chamber, the place she rarely names and almost never shows. Learn to read that door, and you will understand why some bonds feel almost fated without either of you knowing why. Number 9. The ghost from her past she can't stop chasing. Every woman carries a ghost. Not a literal one, but the shadow of a man from her past who left an imprint too deep to erase. He could have been a fleeting connection, a short romance, or even someone she never fully had, but in her mind, he represents an unresolved story. It's not about him as much as it's about the way he made her feel. The uncertainty, the thrill, the mystery that kept her chasing without ever fully catching. Take Sarah, 29, for example. She's in a stable relationship now with Mark, 32, a man who genuinely loves her. But sometimes, late at night, her thoughts drift back to Daniel, the guy she dated for 3 months in college. He wasn't better looking than Mark. He wasn't more successful. But Daniel had a way of holding back just enough that Sarah never felt like she had him. That tension became addictive. Years later, that ghost still lingers in her mind. This is what many men don't realize. Sometimes the most unforgettable man in a woman's life is not the one who gave her everything, but the one who left her wanting more. Psychologically, it taps into a deep part of her brain that equates longing with value. The pursuit becomes a loop, and once the loop is never closed, it stays alive indefinitely. This doesn't mean you should play manipulative games. It means you should understand that over-investment can dull desire. When you reveal every thought, every feeling, every intention too soon, you remove the space for her to imagine, to crave, to wonder. That space is where the ghost lives. The Stoics understood this in a different way. Seneca once said, "Absence is as useful to love as fire is to light. Without space, there's no oxygen for desire to burn." The ghost from her past is simply a man who unknowingly left enough mystery, space, and self-possession that her mind kept reaching for him. Mark could learn from this. Instead of constantly checking in on Sarah, trying to fill every silence or rushing to meet every emotional need, he could allow moments where she wonders what's on his mind. Not in a cold or distant way, but in a way that communicates he has a life, a focus, and a strength that exists outside of her approval. If you become that man, present but not overbearing, open but not predictable, you stop being the one chasing her and start becoming the one she chases. And in time, you may find that you're not competing with her ghost. You've replaced it. If you've ever realized a woman still carried the shadow of someone from her past, drop a comment and share your experience. Your story might help another man see the patterns he's been missing. Number 10. When feelings become her only truth. For some women, reality isn't defined by facts, logic, or the sequence of events. It's defined by how she feels in the moment. Her emotional state becomes the lens through which she interprets everything, and when that happens, her truth can shift from one day to the next. You could have been the most consistent, loyal, and supportive man for months, but if today she feels distant, bored, or hurt, those emotions may overwrite the entire history in her mind. In that moment, it's not that she's lying, it's that her feelings have become the only truth she can see. This is where many men get caught off guard. They argue, they try to reason, they bring up evidence. But last week you said, or remember when I did this for you? None of it matters, because you're speaking to logic while she's speaking from emotion. And emotion, in her world, is reality. From a psychological perspective, this happens because emotions are processed in the limbic system of the brain, the same region responsible for survival instincts. When she's triggered, her body and mind respond as if the emotion is a fact to be acted upon, not a feeling to be examined. The Stoics would remind you here, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. For her, that imagination isn't fantasy, it's an emotional certainty. And if you don't understand this, you'll waste your energy fighting a battle you can't win by reason alone. The wiser approach is to recognize when feelings have overtaken facts and to avoid escalating. You don't need to agree with her version of events, but you can acknowledge the emotional truth she's living in at that moment. Once the emotional intensity drops, space opens for reality to return. The key lesson: don't let temporary storms in her feelings pull you out of your own center. If you remain calm, grounded, and steady, you become the anchor she eventually returns to when the waves settle. And if you've ever been in a situation where her emotions completely rewrote the past in her mind, share your experience in the comments. Other men will recognize it instantly, and you might help them stop taking it so personally. If this video sparked something in you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That way, you never miss the mindset shifts that can quietly change everything. Inside, we don't chase, we lead, and we grow together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.